ready to level up your thinking. That's kind of what we're hoping to do today.
Yeah.
In this deep dive, we're going to be exploring the core principles of thought.
Okay.
And we're using this document called How to Think, Core Principles of Thought as our guide. It's packed with practical tips.
It is. It's like having a toolbox for your mind.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
A toolbox.
Yeah.
So what's the, I guess, the first tool we're going to pull out?
Well, I think the first tool, and it's really the foundation of the whole thinking process, is self-awareness.
Okay.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness is so important.
Yeah.
I mean,
think of it as the dashboard of your car. You wouldn't hit the road without knowing how much gas you have or if your engine light's on right.
yeah, oh, that's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
So self-awareness is about knowing what's going on under the hood, but mentally speaking.
Zigzag. It's about recognizing your thought patterns and your emotional tendencies, even your biases. Once you're aware of those, you can start to see how they influence your decisions and your actions.
So how do we actually boost our self-awareness? I know the document mentions keeping a journal.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great idea, but it feels a little daunting to me. Are there other things that we can do, kind of like quick wins?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things you can do is simply pause before reacting, especially when you're feeling a strong emotion, anger, excitement, whatever. Take a breath and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way?
So it's like hitting the pause button on autopilot, almost becoming aware of the program that's running in the background.
Precisely. And that pause gives you the space to choose a more thoughtful response, and it helps you identify those pesky blind spots that we all have.
Yeah, we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how powerful this self-awareness tool can be. But I'm also the kind of person who loves learning new things and expanding my horizons. So where does that fit in?
Yeah. That's where openness comes in, and it's a game changer. Imagine your mind as a garden.
Okay.
Openness is like planting seeds. You never know which ones will flourish, but without planting them, you're just stuck with what you've got.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about being open to new information, but to new perspectives and new ways of thinking.
Exactly. And that can be challenging, especially in a world where everyone seems to have such a strong opinion about everything.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in like the echo chamber effect where everyone's just reinforcing the same beliefs.
That's why openness needs its partner in crime, skepticism.
Skepticism. So like the art of questioning everything. Doesn't that sound a bit cynical though?
Not at all.
Really?
It's not about dismissing everything you hear, but about thinking critically. Imagine skepticism is the quality control in your thinking factory. It makes sure that only the most reliable ideas and information make it through.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we put skepticism into practice without turning into, conspiracy theorists?
Well, one simple trick is to always ask for evidence. Don't just accept claims at face value. Dig a little deeper, especially when something sounds too good to be true or if it triggers a strong emotional reaction in you.
That's such a good reminder, especially in the age of social media.
Yes.
But if we're constantly questioning everything, won't that lead to analysis paralysis?
That's a valid concern. And it brings us to the next principle, critical thinking. It's about taking all that information we've gathered, evaluating it, and then making sense of it all.
So it's not just about gathering information, but it's about knowing what to do with it.
Exactly. Imagine you're putting together a puzzle. Critical thinking is about looking at each piece and figuring out how they fit together and ultimately seeing the bigger picture.
And this helps us avoid getting stuck in that analysis paralysis loop.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is about making connections, drawing conclusions, and then crucially deciding what action to take based on that analysis.
So it's almost like it's the engine that drives us from information to action.
Right.
But what about the role of emotions? I mean, aren't they always influencing our thinking, whether we realize it or not?
You're spot on. And that brings us to the power of emotional intelligence.
Okay.
It's not about ignoring our feelings, but understanding them and knowing how to manage them so they don't hijack our thinking.
So it's like having a steering wheel for our emotions, helping us navigate those choppy waters.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Emotions are like powerful waves. If you can ride them skillfully, they can propel you forward. But if you lose control, they can knock you off course.
So emotional intelligence is about knowing when to ride the wave and when to maybe just let it pass.
Exactly. And that can make all the difference in how we make decisions, how we communicate with others, and how we navigate challenges.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
It feels like we're building this framework for thinking more effectively. But is there anything that ensures that we're using this framework for good?
That's a crucial point, and it leads us to the most important principle of all ethical reasoning.
Ethical reasoning. It's like the moral compass that guides our thinking, right?
Exactly. It's about ensuring that our thinking isn't just smart, but also responsible. It's about considering the impact of our thoughts and actions, not just on ourselves, but on others and the world around us.
So it's not enough to just think, well, we also have to think ethically.
Precisely. It's like building a house. You can have the most beautiful design, the sturdiest materials, but without a solid foundation, it will crumble.
Yeah.
Ethical reasoning is that foundation for all our thinking.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah,
It sounds like ethical reasoning is the key to ensuring that all of these thinking skills that we're developing are used for good.
it is. And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at how these principles work together in real life situations and how you can start applying them to level up your thinking game.
I can't wait to dive deeper into this. Stay tuned for part 2, where we get practical and explore how to put these principles into action.
Welcome back. So we've laid out these core principles of thought. They sound great in theory, but how do they actually work in the real world?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about self-awareness and critical thinking, but how do we actually use those tools when we're like, facing a tough decision or
Yeah.
trying to navigate a tricky situation?
Okay, let's say you're at work and you're suddenly handed a new project. Exciting, right? But maybe your plate's already full and you're not sure if you can handle it.
Oh, yeah, been there.
Yeah.
The excitement of something new, but also that nagging feeling of like, how am I going to do this?
Right. That's where these principles come in.
Okay.
First, that self-awareness we talked about. Check in with yourself.
Hmm.
What are your priorities right now? Are you feeling energized or are you running on fumes?
So before I even think about the project itself, I
Yeah.
need to kind of understand my own internal state.
Exactly. Then bring in the openness.
Okay.
Don't just jump to conclusions about the project. Gather information. Talk to people who might be involved. What are the potential challenges? What are the possible rewards?
Okay, so I'm doing my research, I'm asking questions, I'm getting a broader perspective,
Uh-huh.
but at the same time, I need to be skeptical, right? I
see.
can't just believe everything I hear.
Who's giving you this information? Do they have a bias? Is there any data to back up their claims? That skeptical lens helps you filter out the noise and focus on the most reliable information.
It's like I'm a detective, gathering clues, but also being wary of red herrings.
Yeah. Now put on that critical thinking hat.
Okay.
Analyze the information you've gathered.
Mm-hmm.
What are the potential consequences of saying yes to this project? What opportunities might you miss if you say no? Connect the dots.
So it's about weighing the pros and cons, but not just on a surface level, but thinking about the long-term implications.
Right. And don't forget the emotional intelligence piece.
Right.
How does this project make you feel? Is there excitement or is there dread? Those feelings are valuable data points too.
So it's not about ignoring my gut feeling, but understanding why I'm feeling that way.
Right.
And letting that
Yeah.
inform my decisions.
Exactly. And finally, bring in that ethical compass.
Okay.
How does this project align with your values? Will it require you to compromise your integrity in any way?
So it's about making sure that my decision isn't just good for me, but it also aligns with my sense of right and wrong.
Right. By applying these principles, you're moving beyond just a gut reaction or a purely logical analysis. You're making a thoughtful, well-rounded decision.
I love that it's like leveling up from decision-making 1.0 to like the super-powered version.
And these principles aren't just for big decisions. Think about how we communicate with each other. Have you ever had a conversation that just went off the rails?
Oh, all the time, especially online. It feels like things can escalate so quickly.
Again, start with self-awareness.
Yeah.
How do you tend to communicate? Are you a good listener? Do you jump to conclusions? Understanding your communication style is the first step.
So it's like being aware of my own communication patterns, the good and the bad.
Right. Then openness.
Yep.
Are you genuinely curious about other people's perspectives, even if they're different from yours? Or are you just waiting for your turn to talk?
Ouch, that hits close to home sometimes. It's so easy to get caught up in my own head and forget to really listen.
And remember that skepticism we talked about.
Yeah.
It's important in communication, too.
Okay.
Not everyone is always upfront with their intentions. Are they trying to manipulate you? Are they leaving out important information?
It's like being aware of the subtext, the unspoken messages beneath the words.
Now, critical thinking comes into play here, too. When you're communicating, are you clear and concise? Are you backing up your claims with evidence? Are you anticipating how your message might be received?
It's like thinking strategically about how to communicate effectively, not just blurting out whatever comes to mind.
Right, and emotional intelligence is key. Are you paying attention to the other person's tone of voice, their body language? Are you managing your own emotions so they don't derail the conversation?
It's about reading the emotional cues and adjusting my communication style accordingly.
Right. And of course, ethical communication is paramount.
Hmm.
Are you being honest and transparent? Are you respecting the other person's dignity even if you disagree with them?
It's about ensuring that my communication is aligned with my values and contributes to a positive exchange.
Right. These principles, they're like a toolkit for thinking, well, in any situation.
Yeah.
They can help us make better decisions, communicate more effectively, and ultimately live more fulfilling lives.
I'm starting to see how powerful this framework can be, but is there a danger of, I don't know, overthinking things, getting so caught up in analyzing everything that we become paralyzed?
That's a great question, and it leads us to some of the potential pitfalls that we need to be aware of as we embark on this journey of improving our thinking, and that's exactly what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll uncover those potential challenges and how to navigate them successfully. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into these core principles of thought.
Hmm.
And it's been
Yeah.
really eye-opening so far. But you mentioned that there can be some downsides to all this thinking.
Absolutely, like
Hmm.
any powerful tool you have to use it wisely.
Okay, spill the tea. What kind of backfires are we talking about?
Well, one of the most common pitfalls is analysis paralysis. You get so caught up in gathering information and weighing every single option that you never actually make a decision.
Yeah, and I can totally see that happening.
Yeah.
It's like scrolling endlessly through reviews online, trying to find the absolute perfect product, and then never actually buying anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to trust your judgment and take action. Remember, thinking is a tool for doing, not just for thinking itself.
Okay, so it's about finding that sweet spot between overthinking and, I guess you could say, underthinking.
Right. Another danger is the echo chamber effect.
Yeah.
This is where you surround yourself with people and information that only confirm your existing beliefs.
It's like living in a filter bubble.
Right. Where everyone agrees with you and
Right.
no one challenges your perspective. And that can be really dangerous because it prevents you from growing and learning. It's like a garden that only has one type of plant. Eventually, this soil becomes depleted.
So how do we break out of that echo chamber?
Remember, those principles of openness and skepticism,
Yeah.
that's your antidote. Actively seek out diverse viewpoints, even those that make you uncomfortable. Challenge your own assumptions. Be willing to change your mind.
It's like cross-pollinating your mental garden, introducing new ideas and perspectives to keep things vibrant.
Now, another pitfall to watch out for is what we might call the emotional hijacker. This is where your emotions take over and you react impulsively instead of responding thoughtfully.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
It's that moment when you say or do something in the heat of the moment and then you instantly regret it.
Right. That's why emotional intelligence is so crucial. It helps you recognize those intense emotions. Take a step back and choose a more constructive response.
It's like having a mental cool-down period before you hit send on that angry email.
Exactly. And finally, there's the risk of ethical fading. This is when ethical considerations slip away in the face of pressure or self-interest, or even just simple convenience.
It's like your moral compass gets a little blurry when you're tempted to take the easy way out, even if it means compromising your values.
Right, and this can happen so subtly. You might justify a small ethical lapse by telling yourself it's not a big deal. But those small lapses can add up over time.
So how do we keep our ethical compass pointing true north?
It comes back to that principle of ethical reasoning. Make it a habit to ask yourself, what are the ethical implications of this decision? Or who might be affected by my actions?
It's like having this built-in ethics check for every decision we make.
Exactly. And remember, ethical reasoning isn't just about avoiding bad behavior.
Yeah.
It's also about actively striving to do good in the world.
This has been such an insightful journey.
It has.
I feel like we've not just explored how to think well,
Yeah.
but also how to live well.
I think they're all interconnected. They help you make smarter decisions, build stronger relationships, and ultimately become a more thoughtful and ethical person.
Yeah, it's like, it's not just about having a sharper mind, it's also about becoming a better human.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
The document that we've been exploring says that thinking well is a skill, but it's also a choice. And I love that. You have the power to choose how you think and who you want to become as a thinker.
That's so true. It's an ongoing process. It's worth the effort.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's inspired you to level up your thinking game
Yeah.
and make the world a little bit brighter with your thoughts and actions.
Until next time, happy thinking.